Ant-Man's powers. Ant-Man's powers break their own rules more often than a corrupt politician breaks campaign promises. The first movie clearly states that when Scott shrinks, he retains his full mass and strength. Hope literally says he has the force of a 200-pound man behind a fist 1/100th of an inch wide. You're like a bullet, she explains. But then Scott rides on flying ants without crushing them, perches on people's shoulders without them noticing 200 pounds of extra weight, and somehow Hank Pym carries a full-sized tank on his keychain. Pick a rule and stick with it! Either mass is conserved or it isn't. The movies basically choose whatever physics work best for each scene. Need Scott to pack a punch? Full mass conserved. Need him to ride Hawkeye's arrow? Suddenly he's light as a feather. Need a visual gag with a toy train? Physics take a coffee break, while Thomas the Tank Engine grows to house-crushing size, without any corresponding weight increase. Scientists have pointed out that cramming human mass into ant size would create density approaching a black hole. The MCU wisely doesn't go there, but it shows how the size-changing tech is basically magic with science-y words attached. At least the quantum realm looks pretty, even if the science makes about as much sense as using crystals to heal chakras. Cap's timeline problems. Captain America's time travel ending is emotionally perfect, but logically, well, not so much. The movie spends an hour explaining that changing the past creates alternate timelines. Bruce Banner even says your former present becomes the past, which can't now be changed by your new future. Crystal clear rules, right? But then Steve goes back to return the Infinity Stones, decides to stay with Peggy, and somehow shows up as an old man in the main timeline. Wait, what? By Endgame's own rules, living with Peggy should have created a branch reality. Old Steve should be stuck in that alternate timeline, not casually sitting on a bench in ours. The Russo brothers later admitted in interviews that Steve did live in an alternate reality and had to make an additional quantum jump back to the main timeline. Thanks for clarifying that after the movie ended, guys. They even said he would have needed his quantum suit and Pym particles for the return trip. None of this is explained on screen, leaving us to figure out the mechanics of Cap's retirement plan ourselves. By the way, if you're enjoying these MCU mysteries, hitting that subscribe button helps us keep diving into the plot holes that keep us up at night. Extremis technology. Remember Extremis from Iron Man 3? That miracle biotech could regrow limbs, heal catastrophic injuries, and basically rebuild the human body from scratch. Tony even perfected it to save Pepper's life, proving the technology could be safely stabilized. You'd think such revolutionary healing technology would, revolutionize things. Nope. After 2013, Extremis vanishes like it never existed. War Machine gets paralyzed in Civil War. Tony builds him fancy leg braces instead of using the serum that regrows body parts. Characters lose limbs left and right, but nobody even mentions the healing factor sitting in Tony's lab gathering dust. This is Tony Stark we're talking about, the guy who invented time travel in his garage and created new elements in his basement workshop. Are we really supposed to believe he just forgot about the technology that could heal his best friend's shattered spine? Maybe he filed it next to the arc reactor blueprints under things too useful for sequels. The technology was literally shown working perfectly by the end of Iron Man 3. Pepper was cured, Tony's heart problems were fixed, and the explosive side effects were eliminated. Yet when Rhodes needs it most, it's nowhere to be found. Apparently, saving the world is less important than maintaining dramatic tension for future movies. Infinity Stones' original forms. Here's a logistical nightmare nobody talks about. How exactly did Cap return the Infinity Stones to their original forms? The Avengers didn't just borrow 6 pretty gems, they extracted stones from completely different containers and situations. The Space Stone was locked inside the Tesseract Cube, the Mind Stone was embedded in Loki's scepter, and the Reality Stone was literally flowing through Jane Foster's bloodstream as a liquid. So how's Steve supposed to rebuild a Tesseract, reforge a scepter, and inject cosmic goo back into Natalie Portman? That's not a mission, that's a craft project from hell. And don't get me started on the Soul Stone situation. Cap has to fly to Vormir and awkwardly hand it back to the Red Skull like, "Hey Johan, remember me? Here's your murder rock back." The movie wisely doesn't show us any of Cap's return journey because it's basically impossible to pull off. You'd need Tony Stark-level engineering just to recreate the Tesseract's outer shell, never mind getting the timing right to slip everything back unnoticed. The directors have joked about Cap's unseen adventures, but never explained how he managed it. Apparently, we're just supposed to accept that America's first superhero also moonlights as a cosmic locksmith with access to Asgardian metalworking tools. Heimdall's Omniscience. Heimdall can see across the 9 realms and hear the prayers of Asgardians from light years away. So you'd think he might notice when Thanos invades Nidavellir, massacres the dwarves, and forces them to forge the weapon that will eventually wipe out half of all life. Apparently not! Heimdall, the guy who can spot invisible ships entering Asgard's atmosphere, completely misses the Mad Titan crafting his universe-ending glove. Thor only learns about it after the fact when he meets Eitri in Infinity War. Where was the all-seeing Guardian when it actually mattered? This is the same Heimdall who tracked every one of Loki's schemes and could detect threats from impossible distances. Yet somehow a massive invasion of a major realm, complete with genocide and cosmic weapon forging, flies completely under his radar? It's not like Nidavellir is in some hidden corner of space. It's literally one of the 9 realms under Asgard's protection. Maybe Asgard's destruction weakened his sight. Maybe Thanos found a way to blind him. Maybe Heimdall was just having an off millennium. The movies never explain it, which is weird because this oversight basically enabled the entire plot of Infinity War.
Sling Ring's powers. Sling Rings can teleport you anywhere on Earth or to other dimensions, but definitely not to parallel universes. That's what the first Doctor Strange establishes. These are tools for geographic teleportation and dimensional travel, not reality hopping. Mordo even mentions they let you travel throughout the multiverse, but he clearly means dimensions within the same universe. But then Spider-Man No Way Home happens, and suddenly Ned Leeds borrows Strange's sling ring and accidentally opens portals to alternate Spider-Men with 0 training. He literally just wishes to find Peter Parker, and boom, doorways to the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield universes. No mystic arts training, no visualization techniques, just pure beginner's luck. This creates a massive inconsistency. If sling rings could always access the multiverse, why does everyone act surprised by America Chavez's universe-hopping abilities in Multiverse of Madness? Why didn't Strange just portal hop to find other realities earlier when dealing with Dormammu or Thanos? The real answer is that America Chavez was originally supposed to open those portals in No Way Home, but scheduling conflicts led to Ned doing it instead. So we got a last-minute rewrite that accidentally made sling rings way more powerful than intended, and nobody bothered to explain how that works or why it never comes up again. Strange's strategy.
Doctor Strange's master plan in Infinity War sounds brilliant until you think about it for 5 seconds. He peers into 14 million possible futures and finds exactly one path to victory. That plan? Hand over the Time Stone to Thanos and hope everything works out. But here's the thing that makes this strategy completely bonkers. It all hinges on a rat. Yeah, you heard that right. A literal sewer rat accidentally stepping on the right button in the quantum tunnel is what frees Scott Lang and enables the entire time travel mission in Endgame. So Strange's master plan basically boils down to give the purple guy what he wants and pray that a rodent has good timing. Think about it. Without that random rat, the Avengers stay scattered, Thanos wins permanently, and half the universe stays dusted. Was Strange really watching 14 million futures just to find the one where Ratatouille saves the universe? That's not strategy. That's gambling with cosmic-level stakes.
Infinity Stone's destruction.
The Ancient One warns that removing even one Infinity Stone would doom a timeline to darkness. She literally says, the stones protect reality, and without them, worlds get overrun by forces of darkness. Heavy stuff, right? So when Thanos destroys all 6 stones in the main universe, you'd expect, well, apocalypse. Instead, we get nothing. 5 years of therapy sessions and support groups, sure, but no cosmic demons or reality-ending catastrophes. Earth seems perfectly stable without its universal protection system. Nobody even mentions that the fundamental forces holding existence together just got atomized. It's like the Ancient One was either completely wrong about how important the stones are, or the writers just forgot their own rules. The movie makes such a big deal about these stones being essential to reality's stability, then casually ignores the implications when they're destroyed. Maybe the forces of darkness are just really polite and decided to wait for a better time to invade. Either way, half the universe gets snapped back to life in a reality that should theoretically be falling apart, and everyone just shrugs it off, like losing the cosmic equivalent of Earth's life support system is no big deal. Peter Parker's identity. Spider-Man No Way Home's entire premise is that Doctor Strange's spell brought in villains who knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Makes sense for Green Goblin and Doc Ock, but then we get Electro and Venom, and suddenly the rules fall apart faster than a house made of spiderwebs. Max Dillon never learned Spider-Man's identity in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. He literally dies without knowing who's under the mask. The movie even acknowledges this when Electro meets Tom Holland's Peter and says, "I just thought you'd be black." He had no clue. And Venom? Even weirder. Eddie Brock comes from a universe with no Spider-Man at all. He's never met any web-slinger, let alone learned Peter's secret identity. The writers later explained that the symbiote hive mind carries knowledge from across the multiverse, but that's never mentioned in the actual film. So we're supposed to accept that somewhere in the infinite multiverse, a random symbiote met a Spider-Man, and that knowledge somehow justified pulling Eddie into this reality? Either Strange's spell was way broader than advertised, or the filmmakers just really wanted these popular villains in the movie, regardless of logic. I'm betting on door number 2. The Celestials. A celestial the size of Earth's core tries to burst out of our planet, leaving a giant stone hand and head sticking out of the Indian Ocean. Another cosmic being appears in the sky to judge humanity. You'd expect this to be the biggest news story in human history, right? Bigger than aliens in New York, bigger than half the universe disappearing, bigger than anything ever. Apparently not. Nobody talks about it. Spider-Man fights interdimensional villains without mentioning the giant statue in the ocean. Hawkeye has family Christmas without discussing how a space god almost ended the world. Miss Marvel discovers her powers while completely ignoring the cosmic elephant in the room. She-Hulk has a tiny Easter egg where a news website mentions a giant statue of a man sticking out of the ocean, but that's it. The UN has an emergency meeting about it, but apparently it's not important enough for any major character to bring up in casual conversation. This is literally first contact with cosmic deities, proof that Earth is basically an egg for giant space beings, and evidence that humanity's entire existence was orchestrated by aliens. But sure, let's focus on whether Spider-Man can balance his love life instead of addressing that time we almost got hatched by a celestial baby. Mark 42's power. Tony Stark drags his dead Iron Man suit to a garage and jumps it with a car battery like it's a broken-down Honda. This is the same guy whose arc reactor powered his suit through epic battles against Ironmonger and Whiplash. But now he needs AAA roadside assistance? Here's what the movie doesn't explain. By Iron Man 3, Tony had redesigned his suits to be independent of his chest reactor. The Mark 42 and beyond have their own power sources, so they can fly autonomously and operate without Tony inside. That's actually brilliant engineering! It means multiple suits can fight simultaneously while Tony coordinates from a safe distance. The downside? No more unlimited power from Tony's heart. The suit runs on internal batteries that can die, and the Mark 42 was just a prototype with sketchy power management. So, when it's drained after a cross-country flight and battle with multiple Extremis soldiers, Tony's reduced to borrowing jumper cables from a Tennessee mechanic. The movie never spells this out, leaving viewers wondering why the arc reactor that proved Tony Stark has a heart isn't charging his armor. It's actually a logical design choice that allows the modular, remote-controlled capabilities we see throughout the film, just poorly explained to the audience. Aliens before Thor. Nick Fury's big speech in The Avengers is iconic. He tells the team that Thor's arrival taught humanity we are not alone, and hopelessly, hilariously outgunned. Thor was supposedly the wake-up call that kicked S.H.I.E.L.'s alien defense program into high gear, because until 2011, Earth didn't know about extraterrestrial life. Except Captain Marvel reveals that Fury met aliens in 1995, 15 years before Thor showed up. Young Fury fought shape-shifting Skrulls, befriended a half-Kree superhero, witnessed space battles in Earth's orbit, and even kept the Tesseract at S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. So either Fury was lying to the Avengers, or Marvel forgot their own timeline. The most likely explanation? Fury's a spy, and spies keep secrets. The 1995 Skrull incident was probably classified beyond belief, buried so deep that even most S.H.I.E.L.D. agents didn't know about it. It's easier to motivate your superhero team with a public example like Thor than to explain your decades-old alien refugee program that nobody knew about. Plus, the Skrulls in Captain Marvel turned out to be refugees, not conquerors, and Carol promised to handle cosmic threats via pager for emergencies only. Thor, on the other hand, brought an actual invasion to New Mexico and left a giant crater as proof, demonstrating that Earth needed its own defense force rather than relying on Captain Marvel's interstellar Uber service.
Which plot hole bothered you the most? The convenient rat in Endgame, or the vanishing Extremis technology?
Let us know in the comments.